fam, I hope you are doing well. Today we are going to do book recommendations based on your favorite hobby. So while I was trying to make this series on like how to make you read more, faster, or at all, I was just thinking about all the other hobbies that one might have. And I just thought it'd be so cool to do a book recommendations video based on your other hobbies that you might have. But also I just thought that it would be like an easier way for you to flow into reading if you were reading books that were based on something that you really like doing otherwise. So in this video I have, I think, 6 hobbies. So they are like travel, sports, what else do I have, art, and a bunch of things. I'm going to link them down in the description, and you can actually like just move to your favorite hobby and look at those recommendations. I will have a few recommendations in each. Not all of these books I have read personally, but I have heard great things about them through my friends and fellow book readers, so I'm just kind of like trying to compile like a list of sorts. And I hope that you enjoy, and I hope that this helps. If there are other hobbies that I have missed out on, I am happy to make a part 2, so do let me know what they are, and if like you want me to make another part 2 of this with all of those hobbies. Yes, cool. Let us begin. The first hobby is something that I think everyone kinda does, which is watching TV or movies or just binge watching things online. And for this, I have 3 books that I would like to recommend. The first one is One to Watch by Stayman-London. This is about a plus size fashion blogger who basically writes like a piece on how this one reality show, which is like a favorite of hers, which is kind of like a bachelorette or bachelor sort of situation, where essentially, you know, like there's one main protagonist and there are a bunch of people who are like vying for that person's attention and to fall in love, and you know what I mean, right? You've seen those TV shows. And essentially she's like, there's no plus size rep in this, so the showrunners of this TV show get in touch with her, and they're like, hey, can you be the bachelorette for the next show, like the next season that we have. And that's essentially the way it goes about. There's apparently a lot of like, it reads like a reality TV show because there are a lot of like twists and turns and all of that, and inherently it is also a romance. But yeah, I just think that this would be a really good read because it has all of those plot twists of a reality TV show, and it will keep you hooked. The second one is a non-fiction but is so good. If you watch Queer Eye, you have got to read, or rather actually listen to, the memoir of Jonathan Van Ness, which is called Over the Top. I absolutely love Queer Eye. Like, it gives me absolute life. I just love it. And Jonathan is just like one of my absolute favorites. He is just such a sweet little like so yeah, he has written a memoir and it is just so good. I would highly recommend it. I would highly recommend you listening to the audiobook because it's him narrating it, and it just has like its signature JVN over the topness. But apart from it being like really nice and sweet and cute, it also goes through just like everything that he went through in terms of like when he was growing up and when he went through hard times and him even getting HIV and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a really good book, and I just was smiling throughout it and also crying in between. But that's just the Queer Eye way. The third book that I have to recommend is That Will Never Work by Marc Randolph. Marc Randolph was the first ever CEO of Netflix. He was actually the co-founder and person who like brought it to life. And he had this idea in 1997 when like the internet was starting to come up about starting Netflix and having like, what if we have TV, like movies and all of that you could rent like a Blockbuster, which was back then, but online. And yeah, it's basically about him talking about his journey and how they kind of came to be. And yeah, it's an interesting book. If you watch a lot of Netflix, then you should want to know how it kind of started, right? Alright, moving on to the next habit, we have working out or sports. This is not my hobby at all, but I know a lot of people who are really interested in it. Not necessarily like doing the sport, but like watching the sport. I have some books for that as well. The first book I would like to recommend is Fight Club by Chuck Palahniuk. Now, Yes, this is the very famous Fight Club movie, but it was originally a book. And I have not watched the movie, neither have I read the book. But everyone says that is absolutely amazing, and that even if you have watched the movie, you should definitely read the book. But basically, if you don't know what either of these are, I will tell you, because essentially it is about an underground fight club that two people make to kind of help each other, like just get all of their frustrations of their regular jobs and lives out. I think, I'm not too sure. I do have to read this book though. So maybe you should read it too and I should read it too, and then we can just like discuss it. The next one is Furia by Yamile said Mendez, and this is set in Argentina, and it is a young adult novel about a girl who wants to be a football player. She already plays football amazingly well, but her parents do not believe in her. They think that like a girl shouldn't play football, and they keep like kind of, I think, promoting the brother more than her. And they basically just don't believe in her dreams. This also involves a love story that happens in between, from what I've been able to make out, and also like a scholarship that she might have to win, and like a tournament that she might have to win. And it just sounds like an overall good time. This was also a Reese's young adult book club pick, and it I've heard just amazing things about it. So I think that this would be definitely a good choice. The third book is The Bromance Book Club by Lyssa K. Adams, and this book follows this one guy who is a baseball player. He's like a major leagues baseball player, and his wife has asked for a divorce. So he doesn't want to lose her. So what he does is he joins this elite book club, which is full of other sports players and alpha males of his city, who essentially read romance books to understand how to woo their women, and like kind of do that. And essentially he's joined it to like win her back, and it's really cute, it's really sweet. I just think that it would be a cute read if you really like sports but also like romance and like lightheartedness. The fourth book, however, I think everyone needs to read, and that is Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. Phil Knight is the founder of Nike, and this book was just so good. I was not a Nike fan, like I am an Adidas girl, but after I read this book, I was like, I need to buy Nike shoes, because holy shit. Essentially, he takes you through his experience, starting off Nike, his experiences growing up, and just the journey that it took. And it's just such an interesting journey. And he writes it so well. I really loved the way that he wrote it. It is just so easily consumable, and it almost felt like a fast-paced novel of sorts, because there were just so many things happening. So I really love this book, and I think that you will too. The third hobby that I have is travel, and I know that we can't do much of it right now, so I thought I would recommend some books to you that you could experience travel through those books, which is why the first book that I have is Less by Greer. This is one of my favorite books because it is just so funny but so well written. Essentially, this follows this guy called Arthur Less, who is a novelist, but he's kind of like on the dumps, and he is going to be turning 50. But when he's turning 50, his ex-lover calls him for a wedding, his wedding, and he doesn't want to go. So he doesn't want to say like, I don't want to go because it just seems rude, but he says that I can't come because I have to go out of town. And essentially what he does then post that is just accept all of the invitations that he's been getting over the years, and just say yes to all of those things that will take him outside the country, and he decides to do that. And through this he travels through to like New York, to Mexico, to Morocco, to India, to Japan, and just like he has all of these adventures. But I just really like the way that Andrew Sean Greer could like put these really interesting thoughts into the book as well. I was compulsively highlighting it, but it was also so laugh out loud funny. and just very relatable. But yes, you also got to see like a lot of these countries through the book as well. So yes, that is my recommendation. The second book is If It's Monday, It Must Be Madurai by Srinath Perur. Now, I haven't read this book, but my really good friend Keshav absolutely loves this book, and he cannot stop talking about it, which is why I should read this as well, and then you should read it too. But this one essentially follows the author Srinath Perur's journey, going through these various tours that happen in India, and he basically talks about his journey and like what all happened, and talks about the place and all of that sort of stuff. And it's just supposed to be really, really funny, but also really, really insightful. And yes, that's it. For any other travel books, I would definitely recommend any Bill Bryson book. They are all amazing. He writes really, really well, and you will definitely not go wrong with any of his books. At number 4, we have music, and the first book that I would like to recommend to you is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And holy shit, this book I absolutely love. I would highly also recommend that you read this on as an audiobook, because it is so good. Let me explain to you what it is about. Essentially, this book is told to you in a format of interviews that someone is taking with the band members of an erstwhile really famous band in the 70s called Daisy Jones and the Sixth, and it's essentially just cataloging their journey from when they kind of started out to like the peak of their like fandom, and like when it kind of like it all fell apart right at its peak, and why that kind of happened, and essentially it is just so good. You just hear from all these different people. I absolutely believed after I finished this book that there was this band. Like, there was no way. I was like, how is it not possible that there is, like, this band did not exist? Because she just wrote it like that you truly believe that this band existed and these songs were real. I have heard later that Taylor Jenkins Reid took inspiration from Fleetwood Mac. So I listened to a lot of their songs after that as well. But yeah, I think that this book is so good. The audiobook is a full cast narration, so it's various people, like, since it is told as an interview, so it's like it just basically sounds like you're listening to a really long interview from various people's point of view, and it is just so good. I would definitely recommend. The second book is Musicophilia, Tales of Music and the Brain by Oliver Sacks. Oliver Sacks is essentially a neurologist, and he's written a few other books like this before, but not about music. This one is particularly about music, and he tells us about how music kind of affects the brain, and he gives us some anomalies, and among them is a man who's struck by lightning who suddenly desires to become a pianist at the age of 42, an entire group of children with Williams syndrome, which is a hyper musical from birth, people with amusia to whom a symphony sounds like a clattering of pots and pans, and a man whose memory spans only 7 seconds, but everything for music. That just sounds so good. I really like getting to know these things, and I think that a book specifically about weird stuff that like the mind can do, which is specifically catered to music, is just so cool. And yeah. The third book I would like to recommend to you is Scar Tissue by Anthony Kiedis, and if you are a Red Hot Chili Peppers fan like I am, this book is for you, because Anthony Kiedis is from Red Hot Chili Peppers, and he has written this memoir about his life and about being in the band, and it is literally just sex, drugs and rock and roll, and just all about his life. It is just, he talks about some interesting things in this. So even if you are not a fan of Anthony Kiedis, but are just fans of people doing questionable shit but being absolute rock stars, this book is for you. The fifth hobby is food, and for that, the first book I would like to recommend is The Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. Elizabeth Acevedo is an amazing writer, and she has written this book, which is about this teen mom who dreams about being her chef, and she doesn't quite have the means to go about it, but she is really passionate about food, and you kind of just see that all throughout the book, and it is really good. I would highly recommend. The second book that I absolutely have to recommend is Kitchen Confidential by Anthony Bourdain. Anthony Bourdain was the host of No Reservations and Parts Unknown, which were absolutely fantastic food travel log like TV shows essentially, and he was before this a professional chef, and this is his memoir where he talks about his time being a chef, as well as like just his thoughts on like kitchens and like cooking and just stuff like that. And yeah. The third book I would like to recommend in food is Relish by Lucy Knisley, and this is graphic novel memoir where she talks about her time with food from being a child to growing up, and about her crucial periods over the years and how food was very like involved in it. Her father was a chef, and it's just this really sweet graphic novel that goes over like her journeys and like the key moments of her life, but she also gives you recipes that she's kind of illustrated, and it's just really nice. And yeah. For the sixth, we have art, and for art I have chosen the portrait of Dorian Gray, and I know technically, well, I mean, something to do with art. Essentially, The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde was written in 1890, but I read it last year and I absolutely fell in love with it. It is so good. But essentially, it starts off with art. Okay, that's why it's important, and then like you'll see. But essentially, it basically starts off with this guy called Dorian Gray, who's this really beautiful man who is drawn by his friend Basil, and he draws his portrait. And then some interesting things happen, and I don't want to tell you what happens. But let's just say that his beauty remains, but something fishy happens, and like I don't want to tell you. You should. It's a really short novel. Just go into it. It is so good. It's just so good. The second book is The Great Believers by Rebecca Mackay, and in this we follow a person who works in an art gallery, which is why art. But essentially, this is in the 1985, if I'm not mistaken, in Chicago, which is also during the AIDS epidemic. And you basically follow him and his friends and what they're kind of going through. At the same point of time, you also see another timeline, which is 30 years later, where there is a mother who has gone to Paris to look for her daughter who has joined a cult, and she is living with her friend who is a great photographer who kind of captured these moments from the Chicago's like AIDS epidemic in that period of time, and you see these kind of two timelines kind of interlink. And yeah, that is why I chose this book. It's a really well done book, from what I have heard, because I have not read it, but I will. You are seeing this happen throughout, but I have curated these books for you, okay? And yeah, that is what it is about. For the third book, I am going to read out from my phone because it just explains it better. It is The Secret Life of Color by Cassia St. Clair, and in this we follow the author as she has turned her lifelong obsession with colors and where they come from into a unique study of human civilization. Across fashion and politics, art and war, The Secret Lives of Color tell a vivid story of our culture. That just sounds so interesting. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I really do hope that you found a book that you possibly might want to read based on your hobby. Do comment down below if you have other recommendations within these hobbies as well. There are definitely books that I have missed out on or just not like thought of. So yes, please do add on your recommendations down below. I have, as you can see, tried to put some fiction and non-fiction in this mix, so I hope that was helpful. If you have, as I said, any more hobbies that you think I should like talk about as well and give you recommendations based off, do comment down and let me know. And that is it for now. Thank you so much for watching. I will catch you in my next video. Bye!